Doctrine and Devotion is sponsored by Logos Bible Software. You can get Logos 8 Basic for free. All you got to do is head over to logos.com/docanddevo. Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion, a podcast exploring Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Jimmy Fowler, executive pastor at Redeemer Fellowship.
So,
whew.
We were just, we recorded the episode on 1689,
Yep.
Chapter 13, paragraph 1.
13, paragraph 1, yep.
Sanctification, we finished. And so we're just kind of hanging out here and talking, and we said, let's just stop and start recording. We'll have this conversation on the mics. Even though we don't have an outline to follow or anything, we just wanted to have a conversation.
And we haven't even had this conversation, like IRL. In real life.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute.
You're a major texter, obviously.
So cute.
So you don't check your text when I'm texting you.
Well, yeah. Okay. First of all, it's Sunday. It's the Lord's Day. I'm with the family. I'm getting ready to come and worship.
Yeah.
And
just look at your phone. Just look at your phone.
No,
I'm texting you. And why is the ringer off?
Because I was going to church.
Okay.
So I like to turn it off so that when
What if there's an emergency?
It's set that my favorites
your
go
favorites,
through.
yeah. So mine doesn't go. I'm not on your favets. Show me your phone right now.
No, I'm not showing
I want to see it. You're one of my favorites.
Am I really?
You were. Right now, I'm taking it off. What do you think about that?
So yeah. I mean, it goes. My favorites. I mean, if Pat had sent me a message, or Brian,
whatever,
or Jeff or Rob.
So we started to talk, and at ShepCon 2019, the Shepherd's Conference.
Yeah.
Happens out there at
Sweater Vest Extraordinaires.
Yeah, lots of sweater vests. Maroon, I think, would probably be the color of choice.
Yeah. FYI, stole that joke. That joke was stolen. I stole that from Barnabas Piper. I got to give credit.
Oh, all right.
He tweeted
because he was there, right?
Yeah,
he was there.
He tweeted.
And, some great guys. Shepherd's Conference is a good conference. Lots of good stuff happening there. But yeah, I asked Jimmy if he had seen the live Q&A. So where I think it was Phil Johnson,
okay,
and
PJ,
John MacArthur,
J-Mac,
on each end of the stage, right? Stage left, stage right, and in the middle were all of the plenary speakers. So it was Mark Dever,
MD, yeah,
Ligon Duncan,
LD,
Al Mohler,
yep, the Al. We call him Big Al.
Call him Almo.
No, Big Al. I like that, Big Al.
And then I think Sinclair Ferguson might have been there. I don't remember.
I didn't watch the video.
And so they were doing a Q&A, and there was a whole lot of talk on social justice and, why didn't these guys in the middle, none of them wanted to sign the statement, that John MacArthur.
Was the conference on social justice?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't think so. But
of course, though, it gets brought up no matter what.
Yeah, well, because there was a lot of pushback. A lot of people were mad that John MacArthur, who helped to write the statement on social justice and the gospel, has all these guys on there who are his friends, has all these guys on there who wouldn't sign it.
All these scholars,
these biblical scholars and
biblical
pastors,
theologians, these
that are widely
stalwarts of our faith,
respected godly men. So,
how dare J-Mac invite such prestigious individuals who,
right? That he actually has a good relationship with, and they're close friends.
Yeah.
It's we have our differences with John MacArthur on some stuff, but by all accounts, I think John MacArthur is a godly guy. He's certainly a gifted teacher, and he. Clearly, there are differences between he and Phil Johnson and these plenary speakers, but John MacArthur's not about to let that break up their friendship, which I think is great.
Yeah,
I think that is a good example because too many people are just losing their minds over all of this.
Oh yeah,
and so you haven't seen that. I watched it live or right after it was live on Facebook, and now it's not. I couldn't find it recently, so we'll have to wait. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, we'll be able to link to it in the show notes.
Or they might not put that up.
Yeah, well, they should. I mean, they will. They'll definitely put that up. But
not if it's embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. Well, some people.
It sounded embarrassing.
It's good. Some people didn't like it, like especially guys that are pro social justice in the gospel statement. They were not happy with what the plenary speakers had to say. They were happy with what Phil Johnson was saying. But you and I were talking about that, and we started to say, like, there's an idea, there's this principle of idealism and tribalism, right? Those two concepts are starting to create some real problems in the church, some real, what we would say are unhealthy divisions in the church. And oftentimes the people that are creating the division through idealism don't believe it's their idealism that's causing the division. They think it's the truth that's causing the division.
Yeah. There's this mentality that, I'm even going to be gracious in saying that I think people sincerely believe this.
Oh, you're so gracious, Jimmy.
No, because
thank you for being gracious.
No, because I think some people on the other side would think that their intentions or motives are wrong, and I actually think that their intentions and motives are I think they're correct. I think that they sincerely believe that what we're standing for right now is the gospel. We are standing for what the gospel is and the implications of the gospel.
Right.
And that anything that creeps in is we must defend.
Right.
So I want to give the benefit of the doubt that
to people on both sides here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That the motives behind it is good.
But motives don't establish truthfulness, right? Or accuracy. And so we can have good motives and or at least mixed motives, right? Some good, some bad, and be wrong in our approach, if not wrong in our content. So, in full disclosure, right? As full disclosure as I can give, I'll speak for myself, not for Jimmy. The social justice movement, by and large, is plagued with a lot of inherent problems. I think that intersectionality is a bad idea. It's a bad philosophy. I think there's a lot of dangers that people too easily accept without critically thinking through the whole and listen to people on both sides to gain a better perspective. So a lot of the complaints, not all, but a lot of the complaints that people who would sign the social justice statement, I would agree with many of the concerns that they have, if not all of them, at least many of them. And so I'm not picking one side or the other here in terms of what I think the problem is. The problem that we wanted to address is when idealism, like when your ideology, for example, of how we're supposed to handle the political tsunami that's coming regarding these issues, how we're supposed to handle that. Like there's well, ideologically you have to handle it this way. Say, for example, signing this statement, right? If that becomes such an axiom, like where if you can't understand why somebody wouldn't sign it, and if they're not going to sign it, then they're obviously a problem. They're letting their ideology drive the whole show more than the truth. Yeah,
it's becoming this conversation of you're either for us or against us, right? And Phil Holmes had a tweet, and I thought it had a thread, and I think it was I retweeted it. I thought it was great. He talked about one of his thoughts was the biggest misconception many have is there are only two sides in the social justice conversation.
Right.
And I think that's the place that we're at. We're at this place of you pick a side, and that's what you need to fight for.
And it's weird because we see this happening again and again throughout history. I mean, look, it's like people will choose a political party because it's closer to their ideology, right? But then it's like they dive in on it. And like now that party or that ideology, that movement, that issue, as expressed among a particular group becomes the truth. It becomes like the thing.
It becomes the focus
right,
of what they're about. And listen, I'll say it. I'm not going to, one of the things that has been discouraging for me is watching, at least from my perspective, founders changing their focus, to one of we must attack or defend against the social justice movement rather than what they were known for before.
Yeah. And I think what they would say is, well, no, we're emphasizing the same things. It's just being applied to a particular issue that needs to be addressed. Right. So I know a lot of people
the cultural conversation of our time.
Yeah. That this is impacting the church in a negative way. So I think I'm comfortable saying that, there is too much coming out of founders on this issue. And it's like, but they would. It's their thing, right? They can do what they want. It's not right or wrong as much as it is. It's not a decision that I would make. Especially with the organization like that I'm running. I would have started another organization to address that issue, perhaps, or another ministry. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are so focused on both sides, right? This happens on both sides, where people it's like another tribe that they've joined. It's like another team. And so now it's like this is going to be the hot thing. And I'm not saying it's unimportant. I'm not saying we shouldn't address it. I mean, we talk about it every week with various people. These
Correct,
issues, every week we talk about these issues. And if they're important, they're necessary, but the tone and the oversimplification and the heat of the conversation, if it's even a conversation, the heat of the rhetoric, I by and large, I find it to be ineffective at helping people think through the process. It generally means you're preaching to your people and encouraging them to hold fast to their view rather than helping people to understand and move from one position to another.
It feels like now you're either watching Fox News or MSNBC. That's kind of what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
It feels like you're watching your channel because it holds your perspective and ideology, and you're just going to become more entrenched within.
Yeah. And, there are some organizations that, they're staying laser focused on what they're all about, which is great, whether that's, RTS or, say Ligonier, right? Like they're like, no, we're not deviating. We're doing what we do. It doesn't mean that those people don't have anything to say.
Well. I want to throw that
right,
out
absolutely.
there.
Like they stay pretty laser focused on and this is what I've always loved. Like the pastors that I've been most influenced by, if I'm honest, the pastors that I've been most influenced by are a collection of old dead saints and just a handful of moderns. So most of them are guys like, Richard Baxter or, Jonathan Edwards. There are a number of Puritan pastors that I've read, and I've like, wow, what they do resonates with me, and what their ideology, their principles, I think are good. Though I don't want to hold those things as scripture because they're not scripture, but I like them and I learn from them. But then there's been a handful of guys, present day saints, and those guys. One of the big takeaways for me is that the successful pastors, and success does not have anything to do with the size of their church. I mean faithful and fruitful. That's what I mean by successful.
Yeah.
So the faithful and fruitful pastors that I admire and I learn the most from are guys that are very focused on the local church, on their local church, and on helping their church think through issues in a biblical way without dumbing down things to an overly simplistic level. But there's warning, there's teaching, there's guiding, but there's also, I want to equip you to think through these things so that you can come to these conclusions as well. I don't want you to just take my view. I want you to come to the right conclusion based on a proper understanding of God and His Word. But it's their focus on the most important things that I think it has been the most encouraging to me. So it doesn't mean that they don't address denominational politics or politics in our government. But it means that their focus and their emphasis is on the ministry of the Word and on theology experienced and applied and expressed.
And I think, we otherwise we get kind of this deviation that you're talking about, right? We're going to get this deviation. And I want to go back to that, Joe. I want to go back to what that deviation looks like and the result of which. But first, I want to thank Logos. I want to thank Logos for, the way that they are blessing our listeners.
Yeah.
That you right now can go to logos.com/docanddevo and you can get Logos 8 Basic for free. You can get it on your iPad. You can get it on your desktop. It's a great resource. Joe and I use it every single day. It's part of our normal devotion time, our sermon study, or even for me weekly. Getting ready for community group or discipleship group.
It's easy to use even on your phone, man. I use it on my phone. It's crazy. It's so easy.
And having that with you everywhere, your notes with you that you kind of have in there, so that when you're studying a text or you're discussing a text with a group of believers, everything is synced together right there. Really easy. Head on over to logos.com/docanddevo.
You know what's ironic?
What's that?
Is if you get Logos 8 Basic, you ain't basic no more. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's going to be their new slogan.
You ain't basic.
You ain't
if
basic
you start
no
with
more.
basic.
No.
You ain't
Grab
basic
the
no
basic. You ain't basic no more.
There it is.
That'll be it.
Hey, Lagos, you're welcome.
You're welcome, Lagos. So, Joe, when we're talking about deviation, when we're talking about where we see these ministries kind of, what's the danger in that then? What's the danger of getting sidetracked? And I think one of them is, I think we begin to create assumptions for the opposing party, right? Like we begin to have an assumption of what they believe and who they are, and their motives behind what they believe and who they are. And it kind of shows itself you were talking about in that video where Al Mohler kind of stepped up upset.
Yeah, he got pretty animated.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Big Al don't get animated that often.
He's a pretty reasoned, deliberate guy.
Yeah,
and
he chooses his words very carefully.
Yeah, and I'm sure he did then as well. But boy, his arms were flailing when he said something like.
So give us the context.
If I remember correctly, Phil Johnson was saying, "Al, don't you think that it's true that leftist ideology is making inroads into the evangelical church?" And this is after like coming back to this thing again and again. And Dr. Mohler says, "Phil, you know me. You've known me for years. You know I'm going to say yes, but I'm not going to address the problem the way that you are telling me to address it. I'm not going to make a commitment to you to do this in front of like 5,000 people here. It's not. I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way. And if you think that's a test for orthodoxy, then we got to let it be it." Yeah. So
which is funny to ask Big Al that question when he led the resurgence back to the right.
Listen, and it's like, look, man, like he talks every day on the briefing. Like, you know where Mohler stands on this stuff.
Every
like,
day. Listen, old Mohler is also guilty of this, right? In the briefing too. Come on. It feels like every other episode is something about homosexuality, right?
It's an important issue.
It's one that he brings up quite often.
It's like always, all the time.
He's like, man, the weather in New Jersey is coming down strong. Like the debate of homosexuality.
Okay, first of all, he doesn't sound like Rush Limbaugh.
He's a mix of the two.
And second, he doesn't talk about weather. He doesn't talk about weather. Why would he talk about weather?
That
was a bad. Let me, Dr. Mohler, we know that you're a faithful listener. Let me just apologize on behalf of Jimmy for doing that terrible impression of you.
No, that's his.
That
is
definitely. You know what? I'll work on my impression of Dr. Mohler, and I'll come back.
But you know what I mean, though. Like people have their hobby horses.
Yeah, and it's like it's fine. And again, like the briefing, you can do that, right? You can pretty much because it's a briefing on cultural issues, so he can address that stuff all day long, and that's what he's supposed to do. I think the danger in riding a hobby horse and making it like a main part of your ministry, of your church ministry, more specifically, is that you can wind up falsely binding the consciences of believers. Right? There are different strategies. There's different ways to approach this stuff, and so like I've never pushed a particular political candidate from the pulpit. I make fun of every candidate because
they're all corrupt.
Equal opportunity. I do tend to think that they're all corrupt and untrustworthy by and large.
Yeah, there's not really two parties. Come on, people, wake up.
But it's like when you start pushing really hard on one of these approaches, you can wind up binding people's consciences so that they like, wow, man, you're convincing them that they're sinning if they're not doing it your way. And I think that's very dangerous. I'm uncomfortable with that. Even if I agree with you in your strategy, there are other people that are thinking differently in terms of strategy. We might have the same, we both like, so all the Christians that I'm friends with, they think abortion is murder and they want it to end.
Correct.
They want abortion to be abolished. Now, what are the best ways to go about that? And there are different approaches. And some, sure, are in fact better than others, but there are different philosophies, different approaches, and I'm not going to bind a brother or sister's conscience to do it my way, and I'm not going to allow them to bind my conscience to tell me that I have to do it their way.
So, Joe, there's worry. Like I do worry, right? As I see this trend,
right, within
the church, within I guess evangelicalism, right? I fear of not a split. I don't know. That to me seems pretty far fetched. But I do think there's some damage being done. Not just relationally and personally among brothers and sisters in Christ, but I think it's going to be a deeper divide between us.
Like so here's my take on it. And again, I could be wrong here, but when I see those that are pushing hard in the evangelical church, that are pushing hard in the social justice direction, I tend to find a lot more errors in their thinking theologically than I do on the more conservative side. I think the errors on the conservative side are more relational and have to do with approach. Like I'm very concerned with wild and rampant accusations of racism when there isn't racism. But I'm also very concerned on the other side of the dismissal that, just talking about race is what promotes racism, or that racism isn't a problem today. Racism is definitely a problem today. We can have a debate on whether or not systemic racism exists, but there shouldn't be a debate on whether or not racism exists.
Yeah.
Right? Racism does exist, and it exists in the church as well. And we have to find ways to properly deal with it, call it out, and we need to be sensitive to people who have experienced racism. And if people are, and at the same time, if people are saying, well, I've experienced racism when they haven't, then we need to help them rethink that, right? Not, sometimes, like, so I frequently have, I have some cop friends, and we have a cop here at the church, at least one. And so the cops that I know are awesome dudes. Like they're great people. They represent the city well. They represent the public well. They care for people.
Love the Lord.
Trustworthy, awesome dudes. And even like non-Christian cops that I know. Like I know some really solid dudes. But I've also met some really I've met some not so cops, some not so good cops. But here's the thing: I have minority friends who have experienced clear abuse of power from police, and I also have minority friends who just experienced the cop on a bad day and they claim it's racism. And it's like, well, okay, it doesn't mean that it's racism. Like most people are just jerks. They're not racists. But some people are racists, and we got to be willing to call it out. And I don't think that that's always as easy to determine as people want to think. And so when I'm talking to my minority friends who have experiences that are so different from mine, I do a lot of listening, and I try to understand, and I try to be sympathetic without discounting it or trying to argue them away from what they have experienced. I try to understand it and point a better way to go. So I do think that what Phil says is right. It's not that there are two sides, that there are two teams. It's a complex issue that we need to think very carefully about, very biblically about, and the conversations. The church should be having the best conversations. We're brothers and sisters. While the whole country is like picking sides, and you got AOC versus Trump, right? People lining up with AOC, people lining up with Trump. It's like I don't line up behind either of those two people. But the church, we should have the best and most robust and fruitful conversations on this, and I don't think we are by and large. I think we're having a bunch of yelling.
Yeah, I think it's quite embarrassing.
It's like people that are anti-social justice want to accuse social justice people of being like the world. But and oftentimes that's the case. But oftentimes people that are on the anti-social justice side are behaving like the world in their approach in terms of, further creating unnecessary division when there doesn't need to be, instead of establishing unifying principles that I think are better. I don't know. And again, look, we're just talking here. We're so basically when I say, hey, we're just talking, it means you're not allowed to say anything negative about what we just said. It's my get out of jail free card. No, like you guys can take issue with anything that we're saying here. And if we're talking about a specific issue, I'm more than happy to talk about it. But the reason we don't go deep into those particular issues is because Doctrine and Devotion is set pretty squarely on experiential theology and on Reformed Baptist theology in particular. So we're not going to do an episode on white guilt. We're not going to do an episode on that stuff because it's not because we can't. It's just because that's not our focus.
Yeah.
And so it's not wrong for other people to have that focus. But our concern is when churches or even established ministries that have had a focus are shifting that a bit, like you said, it could be a little discouraging, if not confusing. And what I fear is that we are not promoting the kind of unity, not unity at all costs, not unity at the expense of truth, but we are working against the unity that we can have around good doctrine that allows for some differences as it relates to these secondary issues.
Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can follow us online on Instagram and Twitter at DocInDevo or Facebook/Doctrine and Devotion. You can head to the website, drdevotion.com. There you can contact us. You can sign up for the email blast or hit up the store, jofostore.com, and grab some gear. Fresh pod every Monday and Thursday, blog posts on Wednesdays, video content on Fridays.
Hey, Jimmy, do we have any more of those Sip It, Don't Dip It t-shirts?
Yep, we got some.
If you don't have a Sip It, Don't Dip It t-shirt,
go buy.
Even if you practice intinction, even if you like to dip the bread in the juice or the wine,
go buy this shirt.
You should go buy that shirt.
No, they're not. Why should they?
It's funny. It's a funny shirt.
Yeah, but they can't.
It's supposed to be a funny shirt.
Okay, but they can't take it and wear it.
I know a guy that does. I know a guy that wears it to his church, and they do intinction.
You know what I want? I want someone from Banner of Truth to wear a Banter of Truth.
We should bring one for the guy at the booth.
Oh, yeah, because, Banner of Truth is going to be at our conference. So you want to head on to doctrinedevotion.com/conference and register today. He's going to be there. You're right.
Listen, I can't say anything, but Banner of Truth may be giving away a book to all of our listeners.
Yeah,
to all of our attenders.
Yeah, well, no, they are. We could say that.
Can we say that? We can't say what book it is?
We can't say what book it is.
Everybody that comes gets the collected works of John Owen.
No, that's not true.
That's not what it is?
That's not true. That's
not the 16 volumes?
Pat is going to be mad. Pat Daly is going to be mad.
Pat.
No,
I thought we were giving away John Owen.
Stop it.
16 volumes.
Stop it.
Everybody that comes. Register now.
No, stop it. But Pat, you're going to be getting a Banter of Truth.
Oh, yeah. All right. We'll ask you what size, and we'll bring it for you. Just say later. Just say later.
Did I say the Fresh Pod?
Yeah. Whatever. Nobody cares. They know. Everybody knows.